Welcome, everyone, to this webinar. We are excited for this conversation, and we're really looking forward to learning from Elizabeth Roy and also from Miriam Taylor. I'll give a little bit more of an introduction to those two in just a moment. A couple of housekeeping things. This is not meant to be one of those webinars where you passively wait till the end and ask all of your questions at the end. As you have questions or comments or suggestions, um, probably the easiest thing to do is put them in the chat. We will monitor that, and we'll also take a look at the questions at the question box too. But you will receive a recording of this most likely tomorrow. And so with that, let's dive right in. The topic for today is essential skills for the evolving role of learning leadership. And we are just thrilled to, I'm thrilled to be able to have a conversation like this with the two people on this webinar. One of the great joys of my life is learning from smart people. And Miriam and Elizabeth both qualify as that, and with an enormous amount of experience. So, Elizabeth, I want to start with you. You want to give us a little bit of your background and your role at Brookdale, and just maybe a little bit about what Brookdale does.
I'd be happy to. So, Elizabeth Roy, I am currently serving as the VP of Talent and Development at Brookdale Senior Living. Prior to this role, I spent about 15 years in tech between Amazon and Microsoft, and then transitioned to healthcare about 3 years ago. At Brookdale, we are a senior living company, so we take care of our aging population. We do that in independent living communities, assisted living, memory care, skilled nursing, and at their homes. And so we have kind of a full suite of offerings that we deliver to our residents and our clients, so that we can take care of this really critical population in our society.
Great. And how many team members do you guys have? It's a huge organization.
It is a large organization. We've got about 36,000 associates and about 640 communities.
Okay. And Elizabeth, how does your learning team work? You lead it, but how does it function?
It's a good question. So my learning team, I've got 25 people on my learning team, and they're split across a couple different roles. So we
Okay.
have talent program managers on our talent management team. They're running our talent and performance processes. They're building leadership, D&I programs, building our bench strength for some of our key leadership positions. And then we also have role specific talent program managers. So those program
Okay.
managers, we call them our key three roles. It's clinical, operations, and sales.
Okay.
So we've got teams that support them directly. And the key players in those roles, they are building and running trainings for those folks. And then we've got the engine that makes it all run, and that's my learning system and design team. So they're managing our LMS, all of the systems that we use, the tools that we use, and they design the program. So when our program managers are taking a program through that end-to-end design phase, design and
Hmm.
development, we bring them in to bring it to life. So I've got program managers that are currently busy outlining and scripting trainings right now, and then they'll take it to the design team to make it real.
Great.
And what we do in the business is we work really closely with our stakeholders. So whether those are executives at the top,
Hmm.
or our frontline managers, or even listening directly to our associates, we are integrating ourselves in the business to make sure we're listening directly to understand what those needs are and working with them to make sure we're building the right content. We don't build anything without a subject matter expert tied to
Hmm.
it.
Yeah, I would imagine, especially in that industry. Yeah, this is helpful, and we're going to get into some of those very specific topics about how you work with teams. Miriam, those of you who are familiar with Ingenuity webinars, you recognize Miriam. Miriam and I have done podcasts and webinars together for many, many years. Miriam, you want to give a little bit of your background?
Sure. So I'm the client success manager at Ingenuity. And my job really, my background is in instructional design and development. So spent a lot of years doing that work myself and then leading teams that were doing that work. So I really enjoy working with our clients and helping them craft the right solution, the learning solution that they need. But then I also work really closely with our team to make sure they understand and that we're delivering the right solution. So it involves a lot of creativity, which I really enjoy. But again, to Elizabeth's point, always working really closely with our clients and a subject matter expert to make sure that we're developing, a quality product.
Yeah. Thank you, Miriam. And my name is Jerry Zandstra. I'm the Senior Director of Learning at Ingenuiti, and I get to work with some incredibly talented instructional designers and graphic designers and videographers and all sorts of wonderful tools and skills that these people have. And I work alongside them and do the best I can to make sure our clients are successful. Just a little bit about Ingenuiti. Some of you aren't familiar with who we are. So we really provide four different services. The first is consulting, and everything we do is around learning. So consulting, which is needs analysis and gap analysis and so on. We do the full suite of skills for design and development, from planning it all the way to doing the instructional design, and creating it, and then delivery, and then even on the back end, helping people sort of understand what's happened. We do an enormous amount of translation and localization. We've translated over 1 billion words in the last number of years, more than 10,000 different learning modules into more than 200 languages. So we have an extensive team, translation and localization team, that has deep expertise. And then finally, staff augmentation, something we've been doing for a long time. The person who leads that, she, I think, was the first person in the United States to actually do staff aug for learning. So if you need an instructional designer, project manager, graphic designer, we provide all of those services. And then, hey, look, we won a bunch of awards. So that's kind of cool. Elizabeth, I want to in the next slide just kind of come back to you. You've been at Microsoft, you've been at Amazon, you've been at Brookdale, you've been around a while. What have you seen change? What was learning like at the beginning? Where has it gone to? And then in that process, how have you had to grow as a leader? This is just meant to be a general conversation a little bit, right? But there's some really good stuff for us to learn from you here.
Yeah, I think there's a couple different themes that I've seen throughout. One is I've had to be highly adaptable.
Hmm.
Every company that I've worked at does L&D differently. And so you need to be able to adapt to the way L&D is done there. At Amazon, I was on a very scrappy team. I was doing it, building every training, facilitating, doing the coordination, sending the emails, all in one. And so on those front lines, in a really scrappy way, we weren't using off the shelf. We weren't bringing in speakers. We were just doing it, building it with our partners in the field and delivering what our learners needed. When I moved to Microsoft, in my first role there was an element of that scrappiness, working with partners, building it ourselves. But then we also had other elements where we had budget to bring in big speakers. We had budget to bring in more well-known trainings, off-the-shelf solutions. And then when I moved to the global team, I had to come up a level in the way that I was designing trainings. It wasn't me doing it all myself. I had an engine, I had support, I had instructional designers, I had coordinators, I had a whole team of support in how I was building and delivering these trainings. And I had to think globally now. Across an entire company.
Well, and you really went from being a doer to a leader.
Yeah.
At that point, it's less about what you're capable of doing. It's more about what you're capable of enabling other people to do.
Absolutely. It's, you go from leading project teams to leading full scale teams,
Yeah.
and then moving from a team, moving from leading a team of 3 people to leading a team of now 25 people. How do you grow? How do you adapt? And then the context of the company, what leadership looks like at that company,
Mm.
how leaders want to interact and engage, where the team is. In this team, in the first role that I joined in Amazon, there were 3 of us, and we were building a brand new learning and development team. And over the years that I was on that team, it grew exponentially. So it was building the foundation of something brand new. When I moved to Microsoft, we had an established leader who had a great reputation, but he was growing a new team. And so it was new. Then when I got to the global team, this is an established team that's been here for decades, this global team, but we're trying to do things in a different way. And so there's a lot of restructuring. Coming to Brookdale, I was asked to transform. I was asked to make
Okay.
real changes, not just in the way that we work, but in the portfolio that we deliver, how we partner, the way we engage, the things that we're actually teaching, getting more consistency across our programs. And so that takes each of those types of roles takes a very different type of leadership. As you're trying to transform top down, bottom up, all across an organization, of 25, you've got to be deep in the details. You can't do that just hanging out at the top and saying,
Right.
just give me your roll up update at the end of the week. I'm reviewing scripts. I'm providing feedback day in and day out on the minute details, because we've got to make sure that all of these things are connected across all of our programs. For example, every single program we had talked about giving feedback a different way. That's really confusing for your learner.
Right.
I wouldn't have known that.
What do you want from me? Yeah.
I needed to get down and review every script and every training that we had to uncover that issue. You can't do that by being that high level leader. You've got to get deep in the weeds.
Yeah. Thank you. Miriam, same question to you. I mean, you've been doing this 25 plus years, and in a variety of different roles, from directing learning teams to leading learning teams to being more client facing. How do you see, and maybe it's not just you, but how do you see other people growing in their leadership?
Yeah, I think that I would say the sort of piggybacking on what Elizabeth said, the higher up you go, the more you are enabling others, which is one of my favorite things to do, right? And in the one company we were at together, I ended up stepping away from direct leadership of the learning team, stepping more into an HR role. We didn't have an official HR team. It was a startup, but we needed to hire a lot of people. And I would say in that move, I learned a whole lot about being a leader, because now I'm getting people in on the ground floor of this company and I want them to have a good experience. And I started to see the holes that we had in that kind of talent development, and but then also being able to watch them as they developed their skills, and really getting to the point of feeling a lot of confidence. I mean, Jerry, you and I have done quite a bit with startups. And so there is that sort of fear of, I've done all this myself all the way through, and then growing as a leader to say, no, there are people that are far more qualified than I am, and they're going to do a great job. But I love what you were saying, Elizabeth, too, of like, you're still reading scripts. And I still do that too. Every now and then on our team now, someone says, hey, this has to go to a client in 2 days. Is we're a little tight. Can somebody help review this? And it's really important for me to kind of keep in touch with that, so I don't lose sight of, especially when I'm promising things to clients. I don't want to be promising things we can't deliver. So if I just reviewed a 68-page storyboard, I am keenly aware of how much time that actually takes.
Then you're also sound asleep at that
Well,
point. Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating to learn different topics, although maybe by page 50, I might be
Yeah, and that's anything past 50 better be
not as
good on its
interested,
own.
but no.
Yeah. Well, let's move into some more of the precise topics. This one is, and I think it gets at how things have changed, right? The learning leader as transformer. I don't think many people in corporate L&D thought of that as learning leaders in that role in the past, as actually transforming. And then, the first little note we have here is going from no seat at the table at one point in time to a seat at the table to being the table. And we've had both Brent and Carson from Starbucks on and Keith Keating on from BDO. And I don't know which one of those people said that first, but
Yeah.
it's an interesting comment from, and both of them have been around a while, seeing this transformation that learning leaders have become more essential. Elizabeth, what have you seen?
Yeah, I think it's over time we've focused more, on that Kirkpatrick evaluation scale on level 4, on
Yeah,
ROI, on business results.
yeah,
In my time, in the last 18 years that I've been here, the focus has gotten less and less on the smile sheets and more on delivering business impact. And when
Mhm.
you can measure real business impact and show that business impact, you become a true partner to
yeah,
your executives and to your stakeholders. They want you to help them solve problems. And this goes to something that we'll talk a little bit about in just a minute, but being proactive in your listening system, not waiting for those executives to come to
Mhm.
you to say, hey, we have a learning need, but to be so tapped into what the business needs, you can go to them and say, hey, you need this, and here's how I know. And if we solve it, here's the business impact that it will have. That makes you a really key strategic partner of theirs. It
yeah,
also helps as our programs get more nuanced. Those
Mhm.
one size fits all trainings just don't work anymore. We have to
yeah,
get more nuance to the learner's needs, depending on the level they're at, the role that they're in. We work in these highly matrixed organizations, and that means our portfolios also need to be highly matrixed to meet those nuanced needs.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And I think part of what those two guys that I mentioned and Elizabeth, have heard you say it too. Moving from order takers, right? It's like cheeseburger,
Yeah.
cheeseburger, cheeseburger, and moving away from you tell us what you want. We really don't have any input into what
Mhm.
happens. You tell us and we make it and we wish you well, and we don't really know what happened after that. We
Yeah.
did what we were supposed to do. To this idea that learning is actually part of the ecosystem and it's an essential. Keith's new book talks about this too in kind of an interesting way, but almost like an underground root system, right? This is the thing that sustains all the growth. It's gardening time in my life right now, so this is what I'm thinking about as plants. But right, we're preparing the soil and we're making sure all the things are right so that we can support that ecosystem. Miriam, what have you seen in continuous learning? If organizations are going to thrive, what does it mean that they need to be um, really committed to continuous learning?
Yeah, I think that it's really critical and similar to this evolution of being the table. I think organizations are understanding that it's also very important to have that continuous learning mindset because it's not just being an order taker. It's like we can drive business impact. We can drive improvements. We can drive the bottom line. And we do that better when the entire organization is on board and
Hmm.
we have this mindset that we're all continuously learning. And I think a huge part of we talk a lot about learning culture, but that a huge part of that responsibility falls on our L&D teams to help foster that in a variety of ways, everything from something, we all create learning that is not always scintillating, right? But it's important and it has to happen maybe for compliance or purposes but even in the way that we message that kind of training that we develop all the way to maybe some really core high profile, multi-year learning opportunities or programs. Maybe it's a big leadership development, or maybe it's a big pivot in the organization. But the way that we message that, the way that we market it, the enthusiasm that we create, to other smaller things, right? Like just providing opportunities for mentorship, for coaching, for ways, sort of that one-to-one conversation, all of that helps build this continuous learning mindset in an organization.
So I have two questions, and you've both touched on it, and Miriam maybe a little bit more heavily, but many people that are listening in here and will listen to this webinar are in organizations that are still order takers, right? They
Mm-hmm.
know there's and continuous learning, that's not a thing. The executives often think of this as something they would love to do away with if they could. They can't. And so it's a challenge. How do you build that learning culture, that that desire to do that? Elizabeth, what have you seen?
It's a good question. It's hard. It's
It is
really
hard.
hard to get out of that old way of thinking. Learning's compliance, learning is check the box, it's the
Mhm.
bare minimum. Yeah, I'm doing it because you told me I have to, not because I
Right.
want to.
Yeah.
Part of that is what I've been actually going through with my team is they're saying we need to build a culture of learning. You know, people want to take trainings, and the first step to that is having trainings for them to take.
Yeah.
Trainings that meet their needs.
Yeah.
And so one of the things we've done is we looked at our associate engagement survey. What are the things that they say they need in that associate engagement survey? What are the things that they're asking for in that survey? Let's deliver that.
You're taking
Because
us right back to listening.
yeah,
Mhm.
right. Always back to listening. And
Yep.
so what are those needs? And then we're also looking at their onboarding. It starts when they walk in the door. So there's a difference between orientation and onboarding. Orientation is your initial training. Onboarding is this experience over time. We
Yeah.
have orientation trainings. How do we build an experience over time? Coming out of your training, how do we help you apply what you're learning and practice it? That's part of learning also, that 70-20-10, right? You need to get on the job and practice what you're learning. You need to get feedback, coaching, mentoring, peer connects, conversations. So, for example, we're building a new onboarding program for our ops leaders. The orientation period is 3 weeks. The onboarding program period is 12 months.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, and now they're getting 12 months of continuous learning and development. And we're able to show business impact on that because attrition's going to come down, turnover is going
Sure.
to. Um,
And expense is going to come down if those things come down.
Absolutely, that hits the business impact.
Yep.
When you're not rehiring for these roles every 90 days, we're
Right.
saving money. And so, and they're getting better results because you're not constantly teaching a new person the basics. They're able to build more advanced skills.
Yeah.
And so starting it from those onboarding, I find that's like my way to get the foot in the door and then crack it open from there. And then once they get to the end of their onboarding, what are they asking? Not, oh my God, I'm so glad I'm done with that. I never want to go to a training again. It's okay, well, I've
Right.
had a year of support. What's next?
Yeah. What's next? I was just going to say, if you can get somebody to say what's next, my goodness,
What's next?
yeah. I'm going to ask you, Elizabeth and Miriam, chime in when you want to. David has an excellent question. We don't have to go too deep into this, but Kirkpatrick, how do you measure the impact of the durable or the soft skills? Um, Not easily done, or not easily done in a tight time frame. Elizabeth, how do you guys do that?
It does take looking over time.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yep.
so it's figuring out what those soft skills impact. What is the impact that they have? One example that we're working on now is from day one of the first meetings I had in my new role at this company was communication is a challenge. And I've consistently heard that. And we're building communications trainings now for our associates. But part of the challenge is communicating with other associates. And so what does that impact? That impacts our investigations, our associate relations, the things people complain about. A lot of those come back to communication. So how would I know if our communications trainings are having an impact? Are we seeing less of those
Right.
communications related issues?
Do you do that right at the start? Are you setting those as your objectives rather than X number of people will take this course and pay? Are your objectives more, these are the behaviors that we want to see? The period of time might be longer. It's okay if it's a 12-month measurement period, but are you building in, because I know what Miriam's going to say. She's going to say absolutely, right? But that's not always easy to do. Do you do something like that?
Yeah, so you may not be able to, the honest truth is you may not be able to do it with every training.
Yeah.
Especially if you have a really vast portfolio, because if people are taking a lot of trainings, it's hard to single in on the impact of one training versus the 3 others that they took.
Yeah.
But when you look collectively, like here's our soft skill portfolio, and the people that took these trainings went from X score to X score, like as managers on our associate engagement survey. Their management scores improved after taking these trainings. Or the leaders at this community took a communications training and their resident NPS got better, net promoter score improved, because we know communication has a direct impact on that net promoter score.
Yeah.
And so we can do that by program, but I also look at the NPS of the program. I look at the satisfaction scores for our programs. That's level 1. I look at, would you recommend this to someone else? That's level 1. I look at behavior. Did you apply this? Let me survey you 30, 60 days following. So I want to look at the metrics from how many people came through and did they enjoy their experience, all the way through how much money did it save us in turnover, and go through that whole level. I don't think that there's a wrong level in Kirkpatrick's evaluation model. I only think it's wrong when we stop at level 1.
Yeah.
That's what we've had a habit of doing for a really long time as learning professionals, because level 1 is easy. I can give you a survey before the session's done and get your feedback like that. It's harder to build measurement over 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 6 months, a year, to figure out what the impact really is of these programs.
Yeah. And to track and to analyze.
Yeah.
Which is thankfully AI is making some of that easier. I want to move on to the next slide and just kind of incorporate a comment from Matthew. Matthew, it's 115 degrees in Arizona today. There are other places to live. You don't have to live in a place where it's 115 in the summertime. Your comment here, Matthew, about this is what I hope you get from training versus what do you want to get from it? And I want to move into a conversation about the learning leader as diagnostician. And for me personally, this has been a helpful distinction. If we think of it in terms of medicine, right? You want proper diagnostics, you want the right prescription, and then you want the right prognosis. If we do the following things are going to happen. And this diagnostic part is where I think we can add some enormous value to our organizations. And Miriam, I just want to start with you. I'm actually going to start with the second bullet point there. You and I have worked with many companies that came to us and said, we have a learning problem, and we poked around at it a little bit and we had a different opinion. You might have a cultural problem. You might have an attitudinal problem. You might have a financial problem. Talk to us about what it means to be a diagnostician, because you do this a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so if you think about, those of us that have been formally trained in instructional design, right? There's this whole piece of needs analysis or discovery, or whatever word you want to choose to use. And, in your formal training, and that can, take months, and we're really doing a lot of deep analysis. And then we hit the real world and somebody comes to our desk and they really wanted a project done yesterday for them. And, that's what I think often puts us in the position of being an order taker, because we're putting out fires, we're dealing with crises. But one of the things that I think we learned quickly, Jerry, was to start by asking questions. And we have a needs analysis, a needs document that we go through. And that's when you say, sort of poking around, there's specific questions, and we just don't let whether it's an external company or an internal department, we do not let them escape. We might not make them answer every question, but we ask the questions, because, to be honest, this ties all back into what we were talking about as a transformer, developing a continuous learning. You start to ask questions and you get things like, oh, I had no idea, or I wasn't really thinking about that. Or you ask, well, how does this problem tie into the business impact? What do you see? What would success look like if we were, and that's a simple way of saying, how do you want to measure this? Because if you
Right.
ask somebody, how do you want to, what measurements do you want to use? How are you planning on evaluating it? Depending on who you're talking to, you're going to probably get some blank looks. I mean, they just need you to fix their problem. That's the
Right.
short answer. But
Or
when you
sometimes
start asking,
they don't even know what the problem is.
exactly. And so
Yeah.
that's what we start asking. We often ask questions about the learners because that's something that's overlooked. We think it's obvious, right? Like, well, I don't know, we're developing training for these people. I do it all the time. Well, let's dig into this particular
Yeah.
subset. And those are the kinds of questions you start digging into them. Then you start to both craft the correct solution, but also to determine, is this even really a learning problem?
Yeah. And I'll tell you a story via negativa, right? Early on, we had a client a very, very large client, well-known client that came to us with a learning problem that they defined. Honestly, it wasn't very well thought out. And about halfway through, I had the strong suspicion that this was not a learning problem. And whatever we were building wasn't going to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And, being young and inexperienced, I boldly said nothing, not a word. And it crashed and burned. And, I learned a valuable lesson from that. The simple statement, hold on a minute,
Mm-hmm.
just let's think this through, right? Let's slow it down. Let's get the diagnostics, because if you, as you know, in the medical world, if you get the diagnostics wrong, everything after that is a disaster. And so, yeah. Elizabeth, I want to come back to you. You've mentioned developing, you actually used this expression a little bit earlier, developing a listening system or developing a proactive listening system. Describe that. What does that sound like and look like?
Yeah, it's going to look a lot of different ways depending on the company that you're at and the reality that you operate in. Some of the things that we have within our listening system are our associate engagement survey. We're working on building a stay interview process. We have exit interviews with our key leaders. We have all of our surveys for our trainees where people tell us all the other things that they wish they had. And we do interviews with our SMEs and deep connections with our SMEs and deep connections with our executives, regular one-on-ones with them. And so all of these different ways of listening to the system help us determine where are the needs of tomorrow, not just the needs of today. They'll tell us, here's what I need from you. But tapping into those things that, they're starting to talk about, but not realizing it's fully a need. So, or what are the things they're complaining about, but not asking for training for, but training might actually help.
Mm-hmm.
But also looking at our data and auditing our own programs. So for example, we had an onboarding program for those ops leaders in our communities, one of those key 3 leaders. And when I was digging into the data of how many people completed their onboarding last year, not one of those new hires completed their onboarding training orientation. It was spread out over 90 days, an hour or 2 hour session here and there, 1 or 2 a week over 90 days. Not one of them completed it. And my team was deeply frustrated by it. They were complaining about it regularly. But nothing was changing. And so when I came in, part of what I saw was you can't have an orientation program take 90 days. Orientation, that's the proficiency is too long.
The newness wears off faster than
Yeah, and
right?
you're losing. They're on the job. They're doing the job by that point, and we haven't properly trained them to do the job, and they're doing the job, and they don't have time for training to teach them how to do the job. They're just fumbling around and figuring it out.
Yeah.
Well, they're also getting tired of fumbling around and figuring it out and having their boss down their neck because they're not doing it right. And so then they're turning over. Well, you look at no one's completed their orientation, and we have this high turnover in their first year. That lets me know we have a problem with our onboarding.
Yeah.
So I came to our executives and said, I want to redesign onboarding, and here's what I want it to look like. 3-week intensive, we protect their time. It's on the job learning, it's mentoring, it's with their manager, and it's in the classroom. So it's a blended multimodal onboarding program that helps them learn, practice, apply all at the same time. And by the end of, and you're going to protect those 3 weeks and make sure they're not on the job. They're not real in their role yet. But if you protect them, I'll get them ready for their job in those 3 weeks.
Was that scary, Elizabeth, for the execs you were talking to? Where they're going, so there's no productivity for 3 weeks? I mean, did
Oh,
you have to like show the whole story, the math and all, and you know,
show the whole story. I was playing Tetris in an Excel spreadsheet showing hour by hour. This hour's in training, this hour's e-learning, this is what they're learning, this is how they're applying it, this is where
yeah,
they're on the floor with residents, showing that they're not just going to be sitting in a classroom for 40 hours a week
right,
with the fire hose. What does that actually look like? And so I built out what a proposed 3 weeks agenda would be to help them really visualize and crystallize, oh, this is what onboarding could be. This is what an orientation could be. And then I mapped out the rest of their year. So I'm also going to, I need this 3 week intensive, but also
right,
I'm going to provide support over the year, because we also know they struggle around 6 months. You start to hit the
yep,
wall, and then you start to climb the wall, and then you struggle again at 9 months, a new wall pops up, and you have
yep,
Yeah.
first into that. And so we're going to continue to provide them support over this time and take their learning from that 100 level in their first 3 weeks up to like a 300, 400 level over the course of their first year. So by
yeah,
the end of their first year, they're really experts at the job.
yeah,
That got their attention.
and they feel confident and
Problem
competent,
where I,
and I like this because I go to work feeling good and I come home feeling good because I know what I'm doing.
yeah.
Yeah. I want to move into the next slide. Here, this is sort of a summary slide. It's about moving beyond order taking, right? And we've touched on most of this, setting clear expectations and standards essential. Is this knowledge, skills, capacity, building that kind of environment where people aren't just being push learning, but they're pulling learning toward them. That what's next question. We've talked about measurement, motivation, what motivates them to learn a little bit, feedback and engagement and so on. I want to move into the next slide because there are two very interesting points.
Well,
Oh,
Jerry, do
go.
you mind before we move on to the next slide on this one? This is one I'm
Absolutely.
really passionate about. One of the hats that we have to wear as learning professionals, especially as leaders, is consultant.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
you were tapping into, we're not order takers. We have to ask questions. And so I use these factors that influence performance in my consulting to understand, what are you trying to accomplish, what's happening currently, and why are we not doing what we should be doing? Is it a problem with expectations and standards? Learning's not going to solve that.
Yeah.
Is it a problem with motivation? Learning's not going to solve that. I can consult with you and I could advise you on other things that could help, but training, learning solutions are really only going to address knowledge, skill, and capability.
Yeah.
That's the only factor I can influence with a training program. So I have to wear that consultant hat to really dig deep and ask questions and then advise them on the right approach to address that performance problem that they're having.
Yeah. Kelly brings up an interesting thing. She says, I've tried this before, but the problem is getting the SMEs, or usually the SMEs, to actually participate and do what needs to be done. And then she gives a quote, training is important, but leave my people alone because they're busy. Right? That is a cultural problem. That is a cultural problem. And that person that's saying training is important, but leave my people alone because they're busy, doesn't really understand. And so let's do go on to the next slide, because I think, Kelly, this kind of the point that we're about to make here can help you with that. Asking bigger questions, right? Connecting to organizational and financial goals. And so the person who's saying training is important, but they're too busy to do it, that means I don't see how what you're doing connects to what I'm trying to do. As their manager, I just need them to produce, right? And any time spent training isn't going to make them produce any faster. It's actually downtime. Um, so Miriam, how do you ask and again, and it needs analysis exercise. I've seen you do it, but keep drawing people back to the organ and where that learning ecosystem actually is beneficial to them and the organizational goals and the financial goals. How do you do that? Is it frustrating to do that? Are people slow to catch on to that?
I think, as we've alluded to, one of the biggest things you can do, first of all, is if you know in advance who you're meeting with, obviously, so you can take a guess at maybe some of the questions you're going to ask. I mean, we have these standard questions, but for example, rather than saying, how does what you need or what is your problem tie to the organizationals or the organization's goals, or I specifically will say things like, what does attrition look like right now for you? Or state it positively. How much money do you think you would save if you didn't need to rehire in the next 90 days? And like actual sort of metric driven, positive questions that get them starting to think like, oh, well, I didn't even know that was an option. And as opposed to saying, well, how does what you're saying, right? You have this problem, you need to develop this training, which again is sort of that order taker role. But and even asking, well, how is this going to tie into business objectives? Sometimes they know, sometimes they don't, or it's a vague answer. But by asking really concrete, what would your finances for your team look like if we could do this, or if we could do that? And then the other thing I would say too is it's okay to not know. I mean, part of that consultative role is that I am coming in as someone by your side to help you. Like, I want to make you successful. I want to make the company be successful. So, you know what? Hey, you don't know the answer right now. Let's figure it out together. That's where that one question, what would success look like for you, came from. I mean, we used to kind of come at it from sort of this hard Kirkpatrick's or whatever it would be, what level of, and we're getting blank stares because we're using sort of this L&D, language that people don't always track with. So it's just more of a consultative, simple question. What would success look like? What would make you go home and sleep good at night? If we could help you do this, what would make you feel better? And those sorts of questions.
Yeah. And then Elizabeth, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think Miriam's tapping into something very important here. You have to speak the language of the business.
Yeah.
I had a boss at Amazon. She called it BOFO. You have to speak BOFO, by operators for operators. That is the language that we use. That is how we speak. That is how we speak in our consultations. That is how we speak in our trainings. You cannot stay at that. We can geek out on Kirkpatrick and Addie and Sam and all the other L&D terms.
Those are all kids I grew up with, by the way. Addie, Sam, Kirkpatrick, they all live down the block from me. Right?
We all
no
cut
idea
our
what they're
teeth
talking
on
about.
that.
Yeah.
But that's our language, and we need to be able to translate that into something that means that has actual meaning for our learners, for our stakeholders, for our SMEs, for our partners. And so we have to be able to speak their language, or else we'll never be able to show that with them and show what's in it for them. Whether it's a SME, whether it's a learner, to get their interest in the training, we've got to be able to speak their language and translate for them.
Yeah. And you know what? It sort of ties in that last point. I telling, not waiting, that takes a combination of wisdom and courage. Wisdom, knowing the right thing to do, and courage, the willingness to actually do it. What does that look like for you, Elizabeth? How do you not just, you're not passive, you're actively seeking rather than passively waiting?
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of asking questions. So it's less telling and more asking. To Miriam's point, what would this mean to you? How would this impact your business? And it's a lot of building business cases, involving people early in the process. So I don't bring a completed training to my leaders and say, here, I want to launch this. I come to a business case and I say, this is the training that I'm proposing we need, or this is the learning solution or the talent process. And here's why I think we need it. And here's the ROI that we're going to get from it. Here are the pros and cons. Here are the alternatives, their pros and cons. And this is why I'm putting forth this recommendation. So I come with a strong business case to get them on board at the beginning.
Yeah.
And
Simon
then
Sinek stuff, the why.
And outlines and have them involved in that. So they're involved from the beginning. Well, by the time I launch the training, they're fully bought in because it's a we product, not a me product.
Yeah. And if you really do it well, it becomes their idea.
Absolutely.
And that's okay, which leads us into our next topic, being a servant leader. What does that mean, Elizabeth? When you hear servant leader, and you can see some of the stuff on the screen, but pick out a couple of these that are important to you. What does it mean to be a servant leader as a learning leader?
Well, I'm going to start at the bottom
Okay.
on this one. Their success is my success.
Yeah.
My team is not here to make me successful, but I cannot be successful without them. And so my job is to enable. My job is to kick rocks out of their way. My job is to remove barriers and roadblocks. But my job is also to set high expectations. My job is also to make sure that their goals and their work day in and day out are aligned to the business need and the strategy. My job is to provide actionable, candid, direct feedback that they may not want to hear, but that they need to hear to continue growing and developing, to provide them stretch opportunities that challenge them and take them out of their comfort zone. Those are all things that I do to help them be more successful, to help them grow, and to make sure we're delivering results that matter. If I did
And
that without removing those barriers, that would not, like, that is where you
yeah,
stop being a servant leader. But as
yeah,
long as you're enabling their success, removing those barriers and helping them grow and develop, that is what servant leadership is to me.
yeah. And just to be really specific, you're talking there about a servant leader to the team that you lead, to the learning team specifically, right?
I think
Or
it
are you
goes
talking
beyond
broader
that.
than that?
Yeah, so that's what I do day in and day out for my learning team, but I have to take that mindset to my learners as well. How can I remove their barriers to learning, remove their barriers to skill development? How do I help bring them in and help them build the capabilities that they need while still maintaining high expectations? Here it says the job is the job. We
Yeah,
don't make compromises because someone doesn't like an aspect of their job or because they're not good at it. That's still part of the job. And so how do we help enable you and give you the learning and development and feedback and coaching that you need to start meeting expectations for my team and for my learners?
yeah. Miriam, anything you want to add on this? I've again having the pleasure of working with you for several decades now. I've seen you act as a servant leader. Why do you do that?
Yeah, so I would say, I don't think it's necessarily unique, but people that are in the L&D business world in general, we believe people can learn and grow, right? Or we wouldn't have been there. And so I think it's partly wired into our DNA. We like to see people be successful, but I would say sometimes servant leadership gets a bit of a bad rap where, it's sort of you're the doormat, or, you're just going to let poor quality work slide by. And Elizabeth made that exact point, of course, right? We're not letting that happen. In fact, that's not really, that's maybe being nice, afraid to attack the difficult issue. But, we're trying to put our people in positions where they can be successful, to stretch themselves, because at the end of the day, they're more confident. Who doesn't want that? And sometimes it means giving difficult feedback. But as a servant leader, my goal with the difficult feedback is to say, hey, you know what? This didn't work for you. Here's why. We can either make some changes, or maybe this particular role isn't the best spot for you. And I had to do that a couple different times. But in both cases, it was handled, and I'm grateful for the fact that we were able to find a spot where that person fit so much better, and they were so much happier, and they were contributing to the company. And so that to me is a win. And that's what I'm looking for as a servant leader.
Yeah, there's an efficiency part of the of servant leadership, and Michael brings this out in the quote from Zig Ziglar, right? You can have everything in life that you want if you just help enough people, other people get what they want. It's sort of a paraphrase of Adam Smith in The Wealth of
Mm-hmm.
Nations about, how the market works. But I mean, there's an efficiency part of it, but then there's also a human part of it,
Right.
right? I really don't think you should be in learning if there isn't some deep desire in your heart to help people grow. If
Mm-hmm.
if that if that doesn't burn within you and you don't take great joy in seeing others elevate in their skills and then their knowledge and in their roles and right all that. If seeing people grow doesn't light you up,
Mm-hmm.
go find something else to do.
Mm-hmm.
This probably isn't your thing. Let's move on to the next slide. You've touched on some of this, serving all of the stakeholders,
Mm-hmm.
serving the learning team, serving the learners, serving the C-suite. It's a big job. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, the title of this webinar is sort of the learning leadership is evolving. And I
Mm-hmm.
and I think this is one of the things where the camera lens is really being pulled back. And it's almost a 360 camera now. You see all of the obligations and responsibilities and the fact that you're serving all of them.
Mm-hmm.
I want to come back. It's been mentioned a little bit. We've talked about listening, but this servant leader equals doormat. And Elizabeth, I would like to ask you the difference between being kind and nice. What does that mean?
Absolutely. This is something I'm really passionate about. Um, I can distill it down into just a simple example. You have a flat tire. You're beside the road, you have a flat tire, and someone walks by and says, "Oh, I'm so sorry. That is just so frustrating. I am so sorry. I hope you're able to get that fixed."
My blood pressure is going up as you're saying this, but go ahead.
That person's being genuinely nice, right?
Right.
Mhm,
They're so nice. The kind person will say, "Hey, let me help you.
mhm.
Pop open that trunk and let's get your spare tire out. I'll help you do it."
Mm-hmm.
They're going to take action.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
They're going to do something. Now, they might also just say, "You're doing it wrong,"
Mm-hmm.
or "Let me show you how to do this."
yeah,
That's also kind because it's giving you feedback that you need. Um, and so that kind person is going to give you direct feedback, is going to clarify expectations, is going to support you. And it may not always be telling you what you want to hear.
right.
It may not be coming in soft and squishy and, I don't know, feelingsy. It may not always be that. But they are going to be there to support you, to enable you, to drive you, to grow you through that kindness.
Yeah,
And even Miriam, with your example, they're going to be there to performance manage you. You can performance manage an associate in a very kind way, but most of these people don't performance manage people.
right,
Mm-hmm.
Give the
right.
constructive feedback because those are hard conversations, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
they're not doing.
People I found who do this really well can balance grace and truth,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
right? They can balance nice and kind.
absolutely.
And thankfully I've had a few people in my life that have been really, really good at that and have helped me understand it. Um, Miriam, any last thoughts on nice and kind? I mean, you live in West Michigan, which is the capital of nice, but not necessarily straightforward.
No, I would just say that my lessons in that have been learned the hard way. And when you work in a startup and you're too nice, you find yourself working 16, 18-hour days. And again, I worked with some wonderful people, but just in general, take too much on yourself. And it took me a while to figure out that, that I need to be kind in that both, I would say, delegating and
Yeah,
trusting, but also having honest and good feedback conversations and all of that.
yeah,
So
yeah.
take a lesson from me and learn it early.
And Bo, I love your comment. Feedback is a gift. When it's
Mm-hmm.
when it's given in the right spirit
Mm-hmm.
and it's accurate, there are a few things better than in life than good feedback. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it can take you off a really bad path and put you on a really, really good one.
Yeah.
Just some key takeaways and some resources just to kind of highlight some things. Moving beyond order taking, I think our industry is heading that way. We are not all in that scenario. Um, Getting there, actually moving beyond order taking is a Herculean task, and it takes all sorts of communication and so on. There's a brand new book coming out by Keith Keating called Hidden Value, and I'll talk about that in just a second. Develop a plan for your diagnostics. Actually build a diagnostic system, or you can call it a build a needs analysis system. But and if you need help with that, give us a holler. We've and Miriam has and other members of our team have done that for a very long time. Set your heart to serving your team, serving your learners, serving your organization. That sort of perspective, servant leadership, is very, very catchy. It's people see it and they typically want to emulate it. So listen intently, listen purposefully, ask tons of questions, and be courageous in the questions that you ask. And then be kind over nice. And I want to highlight the next webinar that we have as well. Keith has been a growing friend of ours in the last year. We've had him on a number of different things. His brand new book, many of you have probably seen, read about it, heard about it. It's called Hidden Value. It's based on his PhD dissertation, which I had the honor to read. And I actually read it several times. It was fantastic as a dissertation if you're a data nerd. He took it and made it accessible and readable. And so Keith is going to be joining us. It's in about a month and a half. We'll send you some information on it. But basically, what we're going to do is pull quotes out of his book and then ask him to explain them. And so it'll be a good conversation. There's also you'll receive a free copy of our recent ebook, Embracing the Evolving Role of the Learning Leader, that dives into some of the things that we've talked about today in a little bit deeper fashion. I want to end by thanking Elizabeth. Miriam and I both thank you, Elizabeth, for just sharing your time. I mean, this isn't you don't win a new car for doing these things. You do it because you love the you love the people in this industry, and your willingness to share your experience and your knowledge is incredibly valuable to us. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you for having me. Like I said, I love talking about this stuff. So this has been great, great for me, and to have a chance to converse with you and answer questions from the group.
Yeah. And Miriam, as always, I say this every time, but I just appreciate your, steady mind and good heart and deep experience. And to all of you who have joined us, thank you. Your gift today to us was your time, and we hope that this was beneficial. And we look forward to any further conversations that you'd like to have. And we wish you a good rest of your day. Thank you, everyone.